Hey guys, before we get started, I wanted to mention we're going to be doing another call-in show on March 30th, about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will have a post with what that is for your local time. If you want to participate, you can write into feedback@theamphour.com. Let us know if you want to talk live. Just send in a note, or if you want to record a message, we will give preference to the people who call in live. So once again, write into feedback@theamphour.com with your interest and what you want to talk about, and we'll get you on the air. As always, thanks for listening. This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded March 23rd, 2016. Episode 292. An interview with Timothy Lamb.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm Timothy Lamb of Spectral Motion.
Who's getting quite excited sitting on Chris's lap.
We were not on my lap, Dave.
He told me you were sitting on your lap.
I know. I said that we were sitting very close because we are in a hotel room. This doesn't sound any better. This doesn't sound any... Tim, I am sitting in the same room as Tim, and
it's an exclusive recording.
That's right. It's an interview. Yeah. Anyways,
you're in a hotel room.
This is just like when we recorded with Jeff, right?
A guy who creates stripper robots. I mean, it's just this show is just getting better and better.
Yeah, it's wow. I didn't even think about that. Anyways, yeah. Tim, where are you from? What do you do?
I'm from Los Angeles, California. I do programming and some electrical engineering for special effects industry.
Which I think that's the first time that we've had someone on that's done special effects. I don't, Dave, I mean, have we had anyone else on that's done that kind of stuff?
I don't recall. No, yeah. I think it's a first.
So it's definitely a first kind of thing for us. And so could you give us a feel for, like, the industry? Like, what is it like out here? Obviously, I travel out here now.
Brutal.
It's brutal. What is brutal about it, and what do you like about it?
What makes it brutal?
Well, what makes it brutal is the type of work that you end up having to do is basically one-offs and a quick time turnaround.
Uh-huh.
And define quick. What's quick?
A month, 2 months.
Okay, yeah. But like super custom,
right.
Mechanical, electrical, programming, everything, the whole piece, and it has to work, right? There is no failure mode. I think you were telling me that like you and some of your coworkers, you're like on-site tweaking at the last minute as well, right?
Right, yeah. That's you know, if it's for a film, you're normally on set.
Okay.
So if something goes wrong, or if you're needed for something, you're there. And if it's for something like, we also do work for places like Disneyland and all that, where it's supposed to work day in, day out for months on end by actors abusing it.
Oh yeah.
And then you have like a 2 or 3 month deadline to create the products that are supposed to work. You know, and.
Yeah, that's a really tough. That's like a deadline plus an extended deadline because it's got to work for however long until.
Yeah, sometimes with theme parks and all that, they're like it needs to work 5 years or 15 years.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, do you have like a testing regimen where it's like you bring in testers? It's just like 5-year-olds just with like metal bats.
No. The theme park work that I've done has been specifically for. Disneyland's parade.
Okay.
They have a new parade now, a new electrical parade, basically.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And, we designed about 20 different costumes of electronics. And there was, so there was maybe 30 boards total. And
flashing LEDs, let me guess.
Yep. Lots of flashing LEDs that are, communicating to their, or responding to their wireless so everything's in sync with floats and all that kind of stuff. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's
it's mainly actors abusing the products, and employees, not children beating it with bats.
Okay, yeah, and I guess there's other stuff there too. I mean, it's even like it's even like sweat and things like that.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like
yeah.
there's a lot of stuff where
Yeah.
it's just human factors and
Right, and of course they don't want to pay for any of that. So
no conformal coding or anything like that. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we try to get away with as much as we can, and we do create good products as much as we can. But with that tight of a deadline and that type of thing, there's always a better way to do it once it's made.
So do you have to, with the tight deadlines, I imagine there's the only possible way you could do it is to have a ridiculously fully stocked shop like the Mythbusters have, with their wall of, warehouse wall full of all those tubs of everything, so they've got everything on hand. Is that kind of what it's like?
No, it's not all like that. I basically am one of the few electronics / embedded developers that work in a shop like that. Very rarely do you find those types of people in those types of in that industry. I don't know why that is. I guess the
right.
I don't know. Maybe financially, it doesn't make sense for them to keep those types of people around, or maybe it's just the work. I don't know. But mostly everything. You get a project, you spec it out, you part source, try to get all the parts in, order a variety of them in hopes that one of them will work out right, and then you throw it all together and see what sticks.
Yeah,
right.
So that's an interesting a challenge as well, just because. Okay, so having stuff on hand, there's not a lot of money for that as well, which is actually really interesting to me. That I would think that you hear about these big effects budgets, and you'd think that there was a lot of that kind of stuff too, where it's like, oh well, you just buy triple of everything or whatever.
Right.
So what are some of the constraints around purchasing and designing for like a low cost but also high spec kind of thing? Are you kind of...
I don't honestly think any of the stuff that we do is necessarily low cost.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's low cost if you look at how much it is for if you had real employees working full time.
I see.
Building that stuff out day in, day out. That would be really, really expensive. But
Right.
the way the deadlines are set up and everything else, I think that's what makes it more affordable.
Okay.
But I don't know how much. I don't know. Like if I have to order a bunch of stuff, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna need like all of these parts, from SparkFun, and I'm gonna need a Mac Pro or something ridiculous, and they'll go out and buy it without even batting an eye.
Right. It's just a line item.
It's just another line item. As long as they know ahead of time how much the project's going to cost, then it's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, that was an extreme exaggeration, but
right. Of course. Yeah. No, that's an interesting restriction too, because I think that often a lot of like people that are working in larger teams as well, there's more restrictions around the purchasing process where it's like, oh no, it has to be from these vendors. It has to be, maybe there's still large part buys and stuff like that, but it's still, a large reel of resistors is still 5,000 parts for, $300, or not resistors, but, it's a lot of one thing for a lot of money versus one thing that's a high cost item kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, none of the stuff has anything to do with manufacturing. I don't have to worry about any of that.
Right.
Right. What's funny though is one project I had to make 40 boards, and I had them all on a single PCB that all was just routed out, so I could just break them out.
Yeah, so like a panel. Yep.
Yeah, it was all panelized, and one single board was going to cost me $400, even though it was it wasn't that big of a board, but because it was panelized, they ended up trying to charge me as much as they can.
Right.
Now, trying to explain that to a middle manager that doesn't know anything about electronics, like, I need this board, and it's going to cost $400, and it's going to take 3 weeks to get it. He'd be like, well, go buy it somewhere else. And why does it cost so much? I don't understand how this one board is that expensive, blah, blah.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that kind of blowback as far as dealing with the daily routine is concerned, but that just comes with that type of industry, I imagine.
So back to the financial side of things, do you have any inkling of how the process works? Does the producer or whoever's in charge of shooting the movie, do they get quotes from different effects companies, and whoever bids the lowest works? I mean, how does it like?
Yeah, I believe it's For the most part, as far as I can tell, it's because I'm not a manager or a project lead that gets those jobs, but probably for the most part, it is your special effects company placing a bid,
Right.
to get that deal.
Right, so
and
there's some
I'm
sort
sure
of
there's-
tender process, yep.
With our shop, I'm sure there are people that come to us directly because it's a known
because
it's a
they've
known
worked with
place.
you before
Yeah.
and they trust you.
Yeah, and that's the other
Yeah.
thing you mentioned as well, that you guys are kind of known for. So what are you guys known for? I mean, like your shop specifically.
I would say Spectral Motion's known for Hellboy.
Oh yeah,
The Hellboy movies.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've seen that one. Dave, you ever seen that movie?
No.
So it's based on a comic book. It was who's it played? It was played by. It was the guy who played the bad guy in Iron Man 2, wasn't it?
It was the guy who.
So we have the internet here. It's fine.
I'm thinking City of Lost Children.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they made a second one. It wasn't as good. Guillermo del Toro. I remember that.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were talking about the lead actor.
No, I was
Ron
talking about
Perlman. Yeah.
Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, cool. Yeah, but that was some big stuff as well.
Yeah. I think it's a lot with Mark Satrakian, who I work closely with, is an amazing animatronics expert who can make characters move very realistically, and he makes systems that are designed so that they look very natural in their movement. And his specialty is that kind of stuff. So a lot of times some work will come in through him as well, just for him being known in that industry.
No, that's interesting
So
too, because
will
like
you
the
have to-
the robotic side of things, we talk about robotics, but there's also it's almost like the cinematics or the theatrical side of robotics. Like you were showing me some video before of like these realistic looking limbs and things like that.
Right.
And there is like a fluidity, and that's almost like the software side. And so what are some of the challenges of turning an idea of what an arm or a leg should look like into an actual arm or a leg on screen or in real life?
What are some of the challenges?
Like mechanically or software or electrically
well,
or stuff that you've had to deal with.
It's definitely all about the software.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
definitely all about accuracy of motors and their tolerances.
Okay.
If you don't want it to be jittery, if you want it to be smooth,
Right.
And precise control,
Right. It's almost like a Uncanny Valley, but on a limb basis instead of a face basis, right?
I can imagine that there would be some sort of, you could do like motion capture. So you could like capture human movements and then you would just get the, the software to sort of like replay those
get software
movements
replay. Yeah.
almost.
Yeah, you could totally do that. I mean, motion capture is used all the time for that very, and it's also used for the digital special effects and all that. The shop I work for is mostly all practical effects. So it's whenever they need an on, camera limb or, character, or
Right.
if a magician needs some kind of prop that's used on stage, or, an artist needs a crazy, sexy robot.
You're going to tell me now that they don't actually saw the woman in half, aren't you? And it's not
I'm
actually
pretty
her.
sure they do saw her in half.
It's just
And
that
they
just
use-
afterwards she
Damn
becomes
it.
a robot. She's part robot afterwards.
Well, they have to replace her legs after.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. It's not so much sawing a woman in half as making of a cyborg, right?
Yeah.
My worldview is just shattered.
Yeah, man. It's
The trick is there is no trick.
that's right. The trick is how's she walking down the street afterwards? You just sawed her in half. How do you do it a second time? No, so you were telling me about as well, that some of the tools. So some of the stuff you've had to do is interface with some of these tools that are outside necessarily. So it's not necessarily someone that comes in and says, writing a C program where there's a loop and whatever and all these steps. It's more like there's all these other software pieces that then you have to translate into a real world thing. So what are some of the software pieces that you have to turn into a piece of hardware like that Max MSP you talked about, stuff like that?
No. That's using known control software that's out there.
Okay.
To control physical motors and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So, Dave, had you ever heard of Max MSP before? Because I had.
No, not really.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like,
Yeah, basically it's a visual programming language essentially.
Okay.
Right,
So what's it
okay.
targeted for? Like, what's the main input? Or what's the main target market?
I would say it originally probably started as primarily a MIDI kind of visual programming environment for MIDI data and using serial ports on your computer.
Okay.
I think initially
Okay.
way
Yep.
back in the day.
Okay.
And now it's used for audio and video work and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
What some people like to use it for with animatronics is just controlling motors in a more intelligent way, in a visual kind of way.
Right. It's like
where they don't have
abstracted,
to like
right?
write a bunch of code
Yeah,
and then
right.
compile it and see the results. They could just plug in, oh, I need to multiply this times that, throw a sine wave LFO on there,
Right.
and kind of see it oscillate and then
Yeah.
morph it from there and shape
Right.
it from there.
Right, that's
I think
interesting.
That's what those
Yeah.
visual programming environments allow you to do.
Right, and that's almost like, and that's from the music side as well, because like
It's very much like the music.
I mean, and that's great too, because it seems like it's a really fast feedback system. If you were trying to create a system like that, but usually when I think about like a robotic system, I was like, oh well, I want to turn a wheel and then calculate how that goes and yada yada yada. But if I'm trying to get just a robot to go in a circle, it might be like go in a circle to start with a programming or visual language like that, and then you translate that into whatever the motor has to do in order to make that circle happen or something.
I think it's a couple things. I think, for the record, though, using this type of software isn't for stuff that risks your life or any of that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
sure,
It's
yeah.
all for visually controlling things to make them look cool. Primarily, we're software like Max, or there's tons of different types of software that does the same thing. But where they really specialize in is, say you have a joystick input, and you want to control 50 servos like a tentacle with a single joystick input.
Yeah.
And you want it to kind of organically do that kind of sine wave effect when you whip a chord or something.
Yeah, right.
That's where you would use something like that. Where
Right.
I mean, of course you could do that in C or anything else. But what's cool about having a visual program for rapid prototyping is you get to
Right.
see the result instantly, and then do some basic math on top of it to really kind of shape out what your idea is.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you could either keep it in that kind of visual programming environment, or come to somebody like me and then write some firmware to do it.
Optimize it.
Yeah,
Optimize.
optimization. Yes.
Tim is an optimizer, Dave. Did you know that? No, that's good though.
So what happens if your company wins the contract and you bid? Oh, we can do this for $100,000, and you're
Not so much, huh?
you sort of blow the budget. Who gets to eat it?
Well-
Do you go, please, sir, can I have some more
I
of your
haven't
money?
had that happen to be
Yet.
honest with you. Yeah.
Right.
But,
so you must be
well-
really that magic multiplier factor of
generally
like,
speaking, I'm a very honest person, and the manager type of person, if they come to me with a project before they place the bid, hey, how long do you think this will take? I'll be like, you got to be kidding me! This is never going to happen.
Oh, good.
Or
Right.
B, or it could take a day, it could take a week, it could take a month.
Right. So you guess a month.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no. So I tell him that,
And
and
then
then
they
he
double
bids
it.
for 3 months, and then we're solid.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Okay, so that's
It's
that's
kind of it's not my job to make sure that we stay in budget. So
Right.
hopefully
You got
they
it.
set that
Yep.
bid high enough so that there's enough wiggle room.
there's enough paddle room.
Another
padding
interesting
in
thing
there.
that you were mentioning to me is just that there's not as much focus on it, like for just the general costs in the industry, right? There's not as much interest in paying industry rates on the design side. It's more just it's like a project bid, right?
I don't think it's that necessary. You see, we're talking about like if they
working
wanted
here
to
as an
have
engineer,
any
right,
come
right.
in or something
Yeah,
and
yeah.
pay them for something.
Sure.
I think it's the lack of understanding of what real world numbers are as far as paying employees. Because that industry, the physical special effects industry, has been on a downward slope since the invent of the digital age.
Right.
So
We'll just send
okay.
it to Korea and
Well,
get
I
some
would have
programmers.
thought that'd be.
Yeah.
I would have thought they'd be charging more because there's a shake-up in the number of people doing it. There's a premium. Oh, you want special effects on that new Star Wars? You want real special effects on the new Star Wars movie? Well, rubbing your fingers together.
Well, I'm actually, this is kind of out of my scope. I wouldn't know exactly what the number's on, but I would guess, based on my experience, that whether it's digital or practical, it's probably going to be, expensive either way you go. It's going to be very expensive either way you go. So I don't think it's necessarily a premium thing, and I think that all good movies have a mixture of both. All good things, you generally mix all of your tools and try to create the best thing possible. And some directors understand that, and others don't. But I don't think there's a premium for it. I don't think that they're.
Right.
I think it's all expensive.
But ultimately what you're saying is that somebody gets the money and it ain't you. Is that what you...
Well, yeah. I would imagine with movies and all that, someone once described to me as it is a very steep pyramid,
with a very wide base.
Right.
It's got a very wide base, but it just,
Or it's an
the
inverted
Washington
pyramid,
Monument,
is it?
With the,
Is it a...
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be an inverted pyramid, like, all the money's at the top, and
Oh, like that.
Classic. It's all trickle-down economics.
Yeah.
Folks.
No, upside-down pyramid, that would be .com.
Yeah, right.
Wrong industry.
I don't know. I mean, like, Dave, what you're talking about, though, too, it's not like... I mean, most engineers are in that same spot, though. It's not like, if someone negotiates $1 million contract... It's not like the engineers are seeing the benefits of that directly. It's just like, you get your rate, whatever. You just got to get the work done. So, I think that's very similar, actually. I think that people listening will have a similar nodding of the head. It's like, oh, yeah.
I just think with the special effects industry, it seems like it's a little bit harder to try to ask for what you deserve.
Right.
As far as
right. Especially like as an independent contractor.
Like if I was doing a I don't know an install for a store window display to do some kind of interactive, when people walk by, it does some kind of thing. Right. That kind of stuff, you get paid very well for, but in the movie industry, not so much. Yeah.
Is it better to be like an independent contractor who hires out your services to the companies who got the contract,
Probably.
Is it so tough?
It's hard to be. Well, it's really hard to be. You're really if you're just if you're a sole employee working for a single company, chances are if they don't get another job lined up, they're gonna lay you off.
Right.
And then they're gonna hire you back on 3 months later when the next job comes in.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. It'll be a contractor.
Sketchy,
you're basically a contractor, and they bring you on tap as soon as they get a contract. And then
you're like a contractor, only without the benefits of a contractor nor the benefits of an employee.
You're basically their plaything. Right? Yeah. So I guess this brings me to the question I should have asked earlier. How did you get into all this, and what are the benefits of all this? I mean, obviously you like it. I think that there's interesting things going on here.
I'm not hearing many benefits at the moment.
I think there are some interesting things here for sure. I mean, some of the work that I've heard about so far sounds interesting. So how did you get into it, first off?
God, I don't know. I've always been making weird things, I guess, and one friend has a job for me that leads to another friend of that person having a job for me, which leads to 6, 7, 8 years later being at a special effects shop. I think it's just getting one job after another through the work that you do. As far as what keeps me interested in it, every single job is something entirely different and something entirely new. And it's constantly learning and it's constantly figuring out how different things work. And it's super exciting.
And it's on a schedule.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, I also like working theater and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
As far as being a techie and that kind of, and it has the same kind of, almost the same kind of adrenaline.
That's an interesting thing to me too, because I never really realized that there is I've heard about the whole DMX. I know there's a control scheme for a lot of that stuff, but it's like there's a whole other world there that I just never did anything with. I mean, so like
DMX.
Yeah, but the DM, isn't that what it's called? Like the control.
DMX is the lighting.
That's the lighting stuff, right? But there's other stuff like that, right? So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The stuff that you're interested in.
Yeah. I mean, you got everything from projection mapping to DMX stuff to, using sensors to control all sorts of different things to doing animatronics and robotics and, puppetry or, yeah, all that kind of stuff. It's all super neat and interesting, and there's always a new challenge, and yeah,
That's good.
and that way it's rewarding. It's also like it's fun work. Like I could be doing this, or I could be in a cubicle somewhere writing code for some stupid
corporate
website.
entity, right?
Right. Or B, I could help some people build some giant fighting robots.
Right.
So
Which you've done. Yeah, I think you need to talk about that now.
Well, I didn't do much for that project, but yeah, we did. There was a show on Sci-Fi,
Sci-Fi.
as we
Yeah,
call
it's been rebranded.
Really? Sci-fi?
No, they rebranded from Sci-Fi Channel to SYFI. It's set
SYFY.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but it was
What was it called again?
it was called Robot Combat League,
Yeah.
and it was basically kind of reality television meets giant fighting rock'em sock'em robots or something.
Right.
Mark Satrakian designed the robots, and lots of people worked on them. For that, all I had to do was come in last minute, throw some LEDs on them, and then figure out a way that so the judges can tell how hard each robot hit each other. Figure out
Right.
some way of collecting that data for the judges so they could judge who won in a fight, essentially.
Got it.
Which was
Who
based.
inflicted the most damage? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
was-
however many LEDs stopped working, right?
Yeah, yeah. I know. And then I wrote some firmware to have the LEDs kind of show the damage as they were beating the crap out of each other. It didn't really work very well though, because basically what would end up happening is the robots would punch each other on the hydraulic actuator.
Oh god, so it just stops
on
working
side
completely.
force,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
would snap the shaft,
Right.
which would then spray hydraulic fluid all over the place.
Nice.
And then the whole thing shorts out.
So it's like, I'm pretty sure you could tell who won that match.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, right.
whoever's soaked in more corn oil.
Yeah. That's
It's actually funny working on that set was they ended up having pyro guys on set. I didn't know why.
pyro
But
like sparks.
Sparks. They were going to add sparks and that kind
fireworks,
of stuff to it.
yeah.
Which, I could disagree with that decision, but it's not my decision to make. But the pyro guys ended up running a bunch of speaker wire all bundled together along a walkway,
Okay.
and we were loading back one of the robots, so we were holding it and bringing it back through a tunnel, and I ended up stepping on the cable, and then the pyro guy screamed at me, "Hey, be careful! That cable will burn a hole right through your foot." And I'm like, "Wait, so you need thicker gauge wire here? Like, what's going on?"
You guys are in charge of the explosives, is that right? Is that what I'm hearing? Wow.
I'm like, you guys are. I think that trick normally works, except for the guys that are building the robots. I don't think that trick really works on those guys.
Right. They were basically saying we don't want to tape that down again. In fact,
You're right. Don't step on
Yeah,
it because you might pull on something and pull a cap out of
They're
the...
trying to scare the newbies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a power thing. That's what's kind of interesting to me about the whole side of that of the industry and everything too. It's seems like a lot of ego and then a lot of just non-technical knowledge as well. Like you were mentioning, there's not many people doing hardware or software type stuff out here.
I haven't met many people that do the hard work, that do... there are some old guys I know that do their own PCBs, but they're also of that older generation where it's like, oh, I will do everything with analog circuits, straight up,
I'm okay with this.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, there's
Sounds
faster
good to me.
ways to go around those problems nowadays. But yeah, for the most part, I haven't met very many people doing it. I imagine it's maybe because a lot of special effects companies don't think they need those types of people, or maybe the money's just not there for the type of people that are interested in that type of work.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know which is the thing there.
Yeah.
What happens to all these props? Because especially on the the blockbuster Hollywood movies, I mean,
Burning
these
Man.
things are worth a fortune, right? Imagine if you've got Luke's, if you design Luke Skywalker's, lightsaber or something, or something like that. I mean, is it tempting to keep it, make another one? Do you cannibalize stuff for parts and they just get destroyed after the movie's done?
Can't speak for Lucasfilms, but I'm pretty sure that went into the Disney vault.
Yeah, these days, yeah, for sure, right.
I bet, but every second movie is iconic, and the props from them are iconic, especially like the the sci-fi and the comic book movies and everything.
Yeah, like Hellboy,
else.
especially. I mean, like that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, it was funny. I was watching a YouTube video of Adam Savage from MythBusters, and he
made the Hellboy gun.
He was making like the I don't know what it's called, but it's like the like hand weapon from one of the villains.
Yeah.
And he was making
the Zork thing from Fifth Element, right?
No, it was from
from Hellboy.
From Hellboy.
Oh, okay.
I'm like that's
sure
funny because that's sitting in a
Hellboy
case
gun.
in the front of our office when you walk through the shop. You see it right there, and he was sitting there, awesome. He did an awesome job, but he's making a replica of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of props end up just being on display at our shop.
And that's, I mean, so if people listening to this also listen to the Adam Savage and the Tested guys, they do the Untitled podcast. That's good too. They talk about the replica prop form a lot, stuff like that. So
it's funny because I listen to that podcast and I hear Adam talk about Mark Satrakian.
Oh yeah,
and I'm like, I'm going into work right now. He's talking about
right.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. No, that's interesting stuff. I mean, and I think the thing that strikes me about a lot of that stuff is that it's so much like look and feel. Like that seems like that's the major point of it. Like is the, like to make a ray gun, like to make like a blaster in Star Wars or something, you don't need to have electronics in it. It just needs to look good.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
And so the stuff that does have electronics on board is interesting.
Yeah, it's mostly with the film-based stuff that I've worked on while being in that shop has really just been either in the background, just helping with the motion control software, writing software, doing like, oh, hey, can we run this wirelessly? And then me go grab a XP,
right.
and do all that for him. Yeah. But or making LEDs blink, which is the most fun work ever.
That seems to be nice.
It's what I wake up for, basically. Yeah.
I've heard, I commonly hear that like they'll make like 5 of a prop or 10 of a certain prop because like some are like real, ones that are going to be used in like a real close up. It's got to be the most intricate, the most accurate, and then they'll use other ones that are just some cut scene or something like that. Is that quite common?
I think that it really depends on the job. I think when it comes to, for instance, when it comes to weapons, I know that they'll make, distant rubber weapons for the fight scenes when the camera's far away, and then they'll make, the hero perfect sword that's showed in the close-up shots.
Right.
And that same kind of logic applies to everything else.
Yeah. Well, you were mentioning too that even this project that you were talking to me about, that a lot of it is, you're making molds of something, and like there's early prototypes, a lot of it, kind of getting back to the prototyping idea, right? That you have throughout your prototyping process, you're going to have these rough models, and then as you continue to refine, so you can almost like use the early models as the far away type stuff.
Right.
Anyways. So that seems like it plays in well, like just having the early prototypes.
Yeah, I imagine that could play a part. I know that the guys that do the mold making and sculpting and all of the real core practical physical effects, like they're amazingly talented people. The work that they do is exceptional. So even in their rough drafts, I'm sure would look badass in any YouTube video.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that the type of work those guys do is just amazing.
What sort of design briefs and documentation drawings do you get? Do you get like just concept art, or do they come in and say, "We need a gun that looks funky"? He gets a sideways glance,
Dave. That's what it is. He's like, "Fix this, make it move."
But do you get detailed drawings handed down from somebody and go, make this, it must be exactly like this, or do you have a lot of leeway to just make it?
No. You gotta basically take what they got, and normally that would be renderings of some kind that then
so
somebody for whatever reason decided to print it out on their dying ink printer, and then you try to color match whatever the hell that they're So but you basically follow what the artist's renderings are as closely as possible, and then the manager will come by, take a photograph, send it to the client for approval and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right, so often it'll just be like an artist rendering or a drawing or something, and then you'll have to figure out how mechanically to build it, I guess.
Yeah, normally that's not necessarily part of my work because that would be more of the mechanical
but
guys.
Others, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, for myself, it'd be like, oh, there's this weird glowing kind of ambient pattern inside of this shield or something. You know, how can we do that with LEDs? And it's like, I don't know, freaking magic. And you basically pound your head against the wall and try to figure out something that works for everybody. And you know.
So what about, you mentioned, what's in your toolkit then, right? So if someone comes to you and they say, I mean, obviously you said there's a lot of LED stuff, but there's other stuff too. Like, what is your go-to for processors?
Micro. He's gonna ask the go-to micro.
Yeah, I mean, but also you said XP, stuff like that. So like when, you know, I mean, Arduinos, are you doing stuff like that? Are you doing higher bandwidth or higher power stuff or what?
As far as microcontrollers?
Yeah, just for prototyping
LEDs?
type stuff. Yeah.
WS2812Bs?
Yeah, no, hey, that's great. I think that's reassuring to people hearing that too, right? I mean,
we do obviously use that stuff. I mean, we use the same sites that everybody else uses. You know, if I need a quick board made, like I think the other day, like a couple weeks ago, I needed a quick RS-485, and it's like, oh look, SparkFun sells a little tiny breakout board that already has it on there. It takes me 5 minutes to order it, and that's all it costs the company as far as my time's concerned.
That's true, right?
So that type of prototyping, we'll use Adafruit and SparkFun and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I personally love ARM. So I'm a big fan of the Teensy stuff is freaking super great.
Teensy, right?
Yeah. But of course I hate using ARM when it's a couple LEDs because you could use a little 8-bit micro.
I'm totally okay with that though. I don't know. Like I think that it sounds.
I just feel guilty for wasting that much power.
You're not. It's not a lot of power, right? It's like you can literally measure it. Just how long. No,
I mean power is in like CPU power.
Yeah.
when I was a boy,
when he was
come on.
But like Dave, it's honestly like just optimizing for time, right? I mean, like
that's the definition of engineering,
right? Exactly,
it's to get a job done, right?
Yeah,
and
anyone that argues otherwise, I think they're just blowing hot air, right? Because they're like, no, you have to do it the right way. Blah, blah, blah. It's like,
when you're dealing with the type of numbers that you deal with in the special effects industry, you don't have to worry about manufacturing. You don't have to worry about how much any of these parts cost. Yeah, you're right. If it's $20 for a Teensy and it takes you like 5 seconds to write the code and upload it through USB and you're done, then you just saved everybody a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
So what is the situation then? So obviously you're doing custom stuff too. So what's the situation where you're like, can't find it online, can't buy just a micro and solder together? What are some of the custom boards you've had to make in your work online, in your work for the effects industry?
DMX controller boards.
So what does that standard even look like? I don't actually. I only know.
Oh, it's just literally a 45.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting. Yeah. No, that's good though. I mean, that's good to know.
God, I can't really think.
Every time I hear DMX, I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Most of the stuff that I've done has been making. I don't know what you call them, daughter boards or whatever that would work with like a Teensy or a Pro Mini or whatever.
Yeah.
And then have all of the layout already done for the resistors, the wiring, the power supply, all that kind of built out.
So, so you're using it as like not a shield, but like an add-on board that basically
sensors
a
glorified breadboard at that point.
Yeah. No, that's smart though. And then you already have all the stuff that you need to go and access those things. You have the library set up. That's
right.
That's good. What about
and a lot of my own custom libraries because I've been doing this since 2008, 2009, and in that time now there's like amazing libraries to get stuff done. But back then there wasn't Jack, so you end up building your own library of things and all that.
Right, and you trust it.
Right, and I know it works for Disney's products, every single day. And
people are calling you because your stuff works, right? That's ultimately why people call you in the first place, and they want you to work on things is getting it done,
Yeah, hopefully they call me because they like me,
Oh, a little ego there, a little bit of that's a little tiny. That is a little tiny Tim right there. If you didn't hear that, that's funny. Yeah. What about ruggedization? So, I mean, the project I saw tonight that was getting thrown around like crazy. But you said robots, other things like that. So, do you have to do anything on your side to actually ruggedize and like enclose it to make sure it can survive, or what do you got to do there?
No, just hope and pray.
Just hoping for build a second one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like for
Spares.
instance,
spares, yeah.
for instance, that one we were talking about possibly potting.
Okay.
All the components because it's an art project that I'm currently working on for somebody that it basically drops 20 feet and hits the ground and bounces and
it
gets
has some weight
dragged
to it
around
too. Yeah.
every day, day in, day out. So it's like, a coworker of mine was like, "Oh, we should informal coat it or whatever," and I'm like, "Why don't we just pot it and call it good?" And he's like, "Potting sucks," and I'm like, "Okay, we figure out the best strategy," and that was a little bit of A, a little bit of B.
Yeah, conformal coating will be like, I think, for more environmental stuff. But the potting,
right? But
it has some
people
mass
think
to it.
that actually holds parts onto the board, and I'm like,
It holds the parts on. Yeah, the parts can't shear off the board.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about it
due
like
to
that.
their weight.
Yeah, I'm not a mechanical expert, so I'm not going to argue with the guys who are.
Oh, no, I've got extensive experience in dropping electronics and testing for that.
No, I'm not- I mean,
seriously,
not
that
you,
was
but
my
I meant my
job for many
coworkers,
years.
So what happens then, Dave? It's just like because it's got the full coat over top of it that kind of just holds them on there, or it's just like what? Goop?
Well, no, the conformal coating does nothing. As you said, it's just for the moisture. But potting, actually, let's say you've got a large cap, right? A large radial cap sticking out of the board. If that board lands at right angles to the ground, like that capacitor can just shear straight off if there's nothing holding in place. Hence why they have the mechanical retention pins. But even then, they can be sheared off. So if you if you've got a TO220 heatsink, TO220 package just freestanding, it can just shear straight off with very little G-force at all. And it, when you pot it, it becomes one big brick. It's unbreakable. Nothing can move or shear off inside. Yeah, it's
Right. I mean, one of my major
problems with this current project is there's some LCD screens on there, and they're using those kind of flat flex ribbon cables.
Oh yeah, those are dainty, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, well, those displays are not connected to the main. It's hard to explain, but basically,
like two boards with
the ribbon cables themselves are kind of floating. They're not really tied down to anything because the two parts are distant by space. So I'm like, I wonder how long this is going to last before eventually, like that copper in that flat flex is going to wear out.
Oh, you mean even just like an actual
just from it flapping around?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that stuff's really. I seem to always break those things, like the flat flex ones.
And you don't want to hit the resonant point either. I mean, just transporting stuff. We've damaged stuff just transporting things because it's on the truck or it's on the plane, and there's a huge vibrational response. There's all this energy in these different frequency bands, and if that happens to hit one of the vibrational modes of that component or that ribbon cable or whatever, it can just boom.
Yeah.
No,
that's kind of interesting too, because
and there are standards for this.
Well, but Dave, you're talking about a setting where like you can actually test for that, right? You could throw something in a truck, like the stuff that Tim's doing. It's like you don't know what's gonna. I mean, like there is no test for a lot of this.
We were thinking about making a jig that just grabs this head of this character and just drops it, picks it back up again, drops it again.
The 2-year-old test. Hey, Dave, what's Sagan doing for the next couple months?
Right. Yeah.
The pay isn't very good, but
he'll get huge forearms.
There are industry standards for these things. There are industry standards for road transport, vibration and shock. Industry standards for air transport, vibration and shock.
Yeah, like the 100 G's tests and stuff. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Another thing that Tim was telling me about too was so I got to go see this project today. But the interesting thing was you were talking about the solution was at first when you were starting, it was this very broad, undefined problem, and you had a couple things, but eventually you started going towards off-the-shelf solutions, which I thought was like it's a very system-level engineering problem, right?
Right.
So you were talking. I don't remember what you started with.
So there's. It's hard to explain without explaining too much, but it's a character's head that needs battery and power and HDMI wirelessly and everything else. It can't have any cables connected to it. And originally I was like, okay, cool, I'll get some hobby grade LiPos, throw them in there, make my own power supply for it and charging solution for it, throw it
Dropping
in there.
LiPos is a really good idea.
Yeah, I know.
Like dropping LiPos.
Yeah. But it's suspended in magic, so it should be fine.
That's right. We're gonna fill it with mineral oil.
Yeah, and then I had a wireless communication, so the computers can see what power is left on the characters, so that way it could be shut down before the power runs out, and all this kind of complicated stuff. And I'm like, oh, I don't need it necessarily any of this stuff if I just simplify the types of parts I'm using.
Right.
So instead of using freaking hobby giant batteries that are meant to do 7-8 amps draws or whatever,
right.
switching that out to one of those like little cell phone battery chargers,
right.
those kind of products. I don't need to monitor how the LiPo life of the battery or anything.
Right.
I don't need, it's already built into the product,
right, exactly.
And if that breaks, hey, you know what, go on Amazon or whatever, then there's like
Right.
20 more of them.
Right. And I think that the draw is always to go straight towards the custom solution, but especially in those like the one-off situations, these like it's almost like the top. Dave's gonna love this. The top-down stuff that I like talking about now. This is my new thing. Top-down. Yeah, you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're sitting in the same room, so we get to hear Dave's his
Great.
smirk from 12,000 miles away. But anyways, yeah.
So you're saying I was looking at the problem the wrong direction.
Right, top down, not bottom up, man. But yeah, no, I mean, just like but you're solving the large solution first, and maybe that's enough, right? I mean, like these broader consumer level solutions first. Like you were mentioning the motion tracking stuff too. We were talking about LiDAR versus.
Yeah, I was going to roll my own because it also needs sensor equipment to know where this object is in 3D space, as well as its orientation and position.
Right.
As well as a whole crowd of people and where they are in a given space and all that kind of stuff. And
right.
Yeah, I was talking about LiDAR or Kinects or whatever, and it's like, well, yeah, there's this sensor out there that'll totally do it. It costs $10,000, or you could just go to the GameStop and buy a Kinect.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I saw it, and it's working great. So Kinect all the way, man. Like it's great.
It was watching you.
Yeah, it was. I don't think I'm allowed to say what it is, Dave, but like this thing was super creepy, like super creepy. Did we mention what the other
creepier than the stripper robot?
Yeah, that was the other thing. The stripper robot is
Jordan Wolfson's.
Female
figure, I believe, is what that art project's called.
Stripper robot.
AKA stripper robot.
AKA, right.
We will link this in, people.
Yeah, it is.
You just need to know stripper robot, link below.
It's not
That's
actually, it's just really creepy. It's just...
So yeah, we're just working on his next art project. That's going to be delivered soon.
That's another thing, too. We've talked about art a lot on the show before, but like... It seems like you're pretty close to this stuff. I mean, we don't talk. I mean, so I mentioned to you, we've had Todd Bailey on the show before. Todd did a lot of stuff with artists in the past as well, and you knew Todd's
Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew, his project collaborator on the VEC 9.
Yeah,
but like, it seems like it's not like a different world, but it's just a different worldview that like you have to then kind of translate into the real thing. Like you are the translator of like these ideas that are sometimes kind of out there, but also kind of push the envelope for you as well.
I think that those are they're ridiculous, but they're awesome. And the reason why, it's obvious why they're ridiculous. It's like, you think it's ridiculous looking at it. Imagine being the engineer or whoever who the artist comes up to you and says, hey, could you do this?
Right,
and you're like, no.
No, that's never been done before for a reason, probably.
Yeah.
And then but actually the challenge is that you have to go and figure it out somehow.
And
right?
that's what the amazing stuff is. It reminds me of like, I hate to go to a movie reference, but like The Matrix, when they did the bullet time thing, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember the visual effects supervisor said at the time, he's like, yeah, it was just somebody asking the right question at the right time. Could you do this?
Right.
And I guess we can do this. We just never done it before.
Right.
And I think it takes kind of that naive
attitude of how the world works to come up with these really retardedly crazy ideas that nobody would not necessarily engineer without them asking it first.
You know, I can think of a person who takes personal pride in telling you when something won't work. He may be on the other end of this line right now. But honestly, you need that, like... So, like, Dave is the balance point, right? And you're the balance point for a lot of these people as well.
Right.
But sometimes you even need, like, the bullheadedness of just, like, I don't care. You know, like someone saying, I don't care, just go do it, right? And Dave's experienced that, and I've experienced that.
Sometimes it works out, but a lot of the time it doesn't.
In
fact, probably the majority of the time.
The only major thing that drives me crazy with these projects is I need parameters.
Constraints.
Like, that is so irritating. Like, a lot of these projects I work on, like, I'm like, okay, well, how far back does this need to be? And how big is this area? Or how long does the battery need to last for?
Right.
Do you want to charge it every 4 hours or every 8?
Yeah.
I don't know. You tell me. And it's like, you let me know and I'll figure out a solution to design around that.
Because that's also going to
They never
determine
tell
the
you what
price
it
too,
is.
right? That's going to be a big piece of the price and how long it takes to do.
Right. And what kind
how
of
heavy
parts
it's
you
going to
use
be.
and blah, blah,
Exactly.
blah,
All
yeah.
these things. Now, that's a really good point. And often that's when
Drives me crazy.
When you're speccing it, if you were speccing a job just on its own, right, you would spec it with those constraints, and then if they come back and they say, it's not 4 hours, I need it to last 8 hours, then you go, and that's a change order, we're going to charge you a little bit more money.
But normally they'll tell you that 2 hours before it opens or whatever for the public.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So it's like, change order is totally fine, but like, what are you going to do in those 2 hours to make this thing work for 8?
Just cut the power in half, man.
Make magic work.
Yeah. Ay, that's rough. So, on to happier things as well. You also do stuff outside of the effects stuff, right? So you actually you are known for your chiptune music stuff.
Yeah, I
what is that?
make chip music
Okay.
sometimes. It is...
What is your artist name? So you are an
Trash
artist
80.
as well as a wrangler of artists.
as well as a wrangler of artists.
Right, so you wrangle the artists in your effects job.
Oh,
And you become
I become that weird,
the
crazy
demander of
artist.
the impossible
Yes.
on the other stuff.
Yeah, it's just something I do as a project on the side, and it's been going pretty well.
Cool.
Unfortunately, lately I haven't had any time to work on it because
Because you were
projects.
saying about the drive. So tell me about that. You said that you haven't had time to do the music stuff because you have these problems sitting there.
Oh, yeah. The problem is you have a project that you need to deliver within a certain set time, and I myself can't work on anything else until that problem is solved.
Right.
So if it's music or whatever else, I could try to start working on music, but I'll just immediately put it down and start going back onto the project that I needed to finish in the first place.
Right.
So I'm very, very, very one-track mind.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
That's very un-engineering-like. Engineers often like to wander and, I did 90% done. I'll change
No, I
projects.
agree with that part, but I think I've had times when it's like the 20 more minutes thing, right? It's like, this layout will take forever. 20 more minutes.
Right.
4 hours later.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
I should go to bed.
Yeah.
20 more minutes, Like,
It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I guess I should go to bed now because I have to get up in 6 hours.
20 more minutes. Yeah, exactly. Like Dave, you can identify with that too. You can.
Of course I can.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, no, that's a common thing. So that's good though.
It also depends on how much pressure is involved with the project. Like if you're talking about a very, very expensive project that has a very firm deadline, and you're responsible for some crucial parts working, I can't have a relaxing weekend until that part's solved.
Right.
So yeah.
So you mentioned some of the stuff for the music side of things too. So you have a thing that's known well in the industry, but like in the chiptunes world.
In the chiptunes industry.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's $100 billion industry.
It's a
that
growth
you've never
industry.
heard of.
Yes, that's right. It's the next hot thing.
Yeah,
Startups, chiptunes.
Back in 2008, I made my first Arduino project, which was a thing I called at the time Arduino Boy, which is basically a MIDI device, which is a musical instrument digital interface.
which is a protocol that musical instruments use to communicate digitally. I made it for the Nintendo Game Boy. So you can use the Game Link jack on a Game Boy to send or receive keyboard or computer note information so it can play. So you could play it like a synthesizer, or
So you plug a keyboard into the Game Boy? Is that
you could do that.
Yeah.
You
That's
could
cool.
also like plug one of those like MIDI saxophone. No, I'm making that up.
Oh, yeah, no, the MIDI instruments. I've seen those. Yeah. DJ Logic, man. He used to have a guy that played with him.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But so that just little hacks like that for that scene.
That's kind of cool, though. I mean, like, you're making your own instruments, and there's it seems like there's other people doing that kind of stuff in the chiptune type. I mean, it's still there was like one chip that was really widely used. Is that right? Or
On which computer?
on like the
C64.
yeah, there was like a sound processor on there, or what?
I think it was
That was the SID chip.
8580 or the 6502 or something like that.
Well, 6502.
No,
we've-
6502 is the processor.
Right.
Or a variant of
We've
it.
had
It was
Chuck
the
on the
SID
show.
chip
Yeah,
inside
it's the SID chip. I
Yeah?
just don't remember the exact part number.
Okay. That's okay. I know that there was something about like the
I'm
generation.
getting mixed
of-
up with all that moss.
Oh yeah, all the stuff they made. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was the 6581.
Oh, I was so close.
Yes, it was like a mishmash with those two numbers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then there was the Atari to STE that it had the YM. God, what was
Yes,
it?
there was the Yamaha chip. That was
Yeah.
the Duck's Guts back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what? You just like throw in a couple like commands and it outputs. It's like a DDS type thing, or what?
Oh, it's a multi-voice synthesizer.
Oh, okay.
I believe.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah, they all had their different kind of specs, but all the cool thing about all of those, or most of them, I should say, of old computer game consoles, that kind of stuff, is they actually had synthesizer chips, not just PCM playback.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is what it's not that people want to play a Game Boy and have it sound like a Game Boy as much as it is like it's literally a synthesizer that you can control.
right. So it's an instrument instead of just a playback device.
Right. And there's something to be said for working within limitations, especially if you're working on that hardware itself.
Right.
It's extremely limiting, which enforces a lot of creativity. There's a lot of people making really good music out of that stuff. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the demo scene thing on the video side.
Oh,
as well,
yeah.
right?
It's totally demo scene related, even.
Yeah. I guess they were probably making videos to go with chiptunes music. Stuff like that.
A lot of demo scene music was from the old school trackers and all that stuff. That was all part of the same.
Totally new to all
ultimate-
this stuff. I mean, I've heard some of the music,
But the demo scene, like there's a Game Boy application that somebody made that's for the Game Boy. It's on the Game Boy. It's called Little Sound DJ, and it's basically a music program, so you write music with it. But I believe it was created because they were working on a demo. Initially, maybe not that version, but originally it was created for. So it is very. Those two universes are very parallel, and
gotcha.
in part they're intertwined essentially.
That's interesting.
So
That's cool though. And so you do like shows, and you do shows in New York and places like that
Yeah.
too. And
Australia and
Australia, Dave, you hear that?
Yeah, he's touring the world. Hasn't been to Sydney, though.
yeah.
Well, maybe he has. You just haven't heard about it.
No, I
he
specifically
hasn't.
try to avoid Dave.
Okay. Well, now
Well, I just figured everybody from Sydney is like him. So
yeah, that must be. He's,
You're
he's,
right. Yeah,
he's basically like the ambassador of Sydney. That's right.
Yeah.
You hear that, other listeners in Sydney? You're all like Dave. Boy, I bet we won't get any angry emails after this show.
I would like to officially announce here on the Amp Hour that I have been selected to star in the next Australia tourism television campaign after Paul Hogan.
Good luck with your future tourist economy there. So what's next then? I mean, so you've built stuff for work. You got stuff on the chiptune side. I mean, what else are you building? What else have you built in the past, or what do you want to build in the future?
I really like mixed media kind of stuff. I don't know if there's a proper name for that, but I don't know if you know what projection mapping is or.
I saw the Grammys this year. That's what a lot of people would probably.
I didn't see the Grammy, so I have no idea.
So I know a guy, or I met a guy from Intel actually over the last weekend at South by Southwest too, and Intel did a bunch of stuff with Lady Gaga, and basically they did this really cool thing where it was like projection mapping over her face. They did like the Bowie makeup, all the like the Ziggy Stardust stuff over top of, so that when Lady Gaga was singing, she looked like Bowie, basically.
She's so not Bowie.
Yes, of course, she's still not Bowie. Although I have to say, so this person was telling me, and he said that she wouldn't work with them unless they actually push some tech stuff forward, which I thought, I respect that. So some of the motion control stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was in no insult to her as much as it was to Bowie.
Of course. Well, yeah. No, of course she's not Bowie. Just like, yeah.
So projection mapping mixed with mechanical movements, whether it be robotics, projecting onto the animatronics, along with doing audio, visual, and all that kind of stuff, mixing things together, those types of mediums, and kind of getting really cool results. That's, as an artist, that's where I want to go.
Gotcha.
Is mixing those things together. Whether or not I have the time for it is...
So what is the stuff for projection mapping? Like, what would you... I mean, so you have a projector,
right?
Is that right?
Yeah.
And then like...
I should describe projection mapping, huh? It's when you... So if you had a box in the middle of a room, and a camera, projector directed at the box in the room.
Okay.
The box has 3 sides that are visible from the projector, and what you do is you basically project the same dimensioned box over that box. And what that allows you to do is to have it look like it's flat. Like you could put a texture over the box from that specific angle,
right? So
and
like
you'll no longer see the box. It'll be just this flat projection screen. Or you could from there have the sides pull out or all that kind of stuff. It basically allows it. The projector's light is in line with the objects it's hitting. And from there you could do all sorts of neat lighting tricks. So
that's cool.
It basically, to me, a projector is like a very fancy modern day light. Like if you're lighting the stage, a lot of lighting artists hate projectors, hate working with projectors because the projectionist or whoever is telling them, oh, turn down the stage lights because you're blowing out the projections or whatever, and it becomes really a hassle for traditional lighting people to work with projections. But the reality is a projector is just a dynamic digital, source light.
Right. Yeah, it's doing
you
like
can do
DLP
all
type
sorts
stuff
of interesting things, with that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But I think that's the thing I want to work on is it's just combining those pieces together.
That's cool.
What's next for spectral stuff?
Yeah.
This coming, I think it's going to be in May, is when the project that I kind of mentioned about goes out in New York.
Oh, yeah.
And then that gets released. And at that point, I'll have all the free time in the world to work on whatever I want.
Oh, I'm sure they'll find something. Right.
Dream on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, this is I think it's really interesting stuff, too, especially like kind of this, it's often we talk about the, some of the stuff we talk about in the show is kind of doing electronics for electronics' sake, but it's always interesting hearing about when, electronics hits the real world and that kind of thing. So there's a focusing of what you actually are concerned about on a day-to-day basis, right? So like maybe, like you mentioned, like the smart servos are, you work with the smart servo because you just want to get that thing done, and you're focusing more on the software side, like you said, right? So that's electronics hitting the real world, that kind of stuff.
Well, with the smart servos, they're highly precise.
Yeah, right. But I just mean like that's a focus thing where it's like you won't necessarily want to just go and build the piece that goes on top of a servo, like the control board for a servo. You just go buy it and get it done with because you have the other things to focus on. That's the thing I'm talking about.
I don't think so. I think that there's for the special effects stuff at least, it's you're not there on their dime to learn, and you're not there on their dime to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So if the wheel's already out there, just go ahead and use the wheel.
Gotcha.
So a lot of the stuff with that special effects industry is try to get it done as quickly as possible, move on to the next thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Because at least that works, because you don't have enough time to actually do real testing
Right.
You know?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a big challenge.
It's a scary thing to design your own everything and then wonder how are you
Yeah.
going to troubleshoot
Oh.
and test it when it breaks.
Yeah.
You know.
You go, oh, look, it powers up. Ship it. You know,
And done.
Yeah.
that's an interesting insight into the special effects industry.
So, Dave, you gonna move out here now?
Thank you very much,
Dave, you
Tim.
gonna move to Hollywood?
Hollywood. What's your dream?
I'm gonna keep doing that, huh?
My dream is not to go to Hollywood. Yeah.
But I heard you love Los Angeles.
Yeah, you do, Dave.
Oh, yeah. It's just, magnificent.
Yep.
You know, all that smog and... Yep.
Sprawl.
Heard it's getting better, but yeah, you're right. No, thanks. I think I'll take Australia.
Well, Tim, thank you for being on the show. It's been really interesting. Where can people find you online or off?
I guess trash80.com.
Okay.
It's probably the easiest way to find me.
So you own trash80.com.
I do. I finally got it from an Australian who owned it for like about 10 years. and he
Right.
finally let it expire, and I ended up picking it up for $80.
Nice.
Yeah.
$80 for trash80.com. Ah,
Oh, actually,
I
that's
would have
that's
so
poetic.
bought
Yeah,
that.
it's very poetic. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. All right, great. Well, we'll have people check that out. We'll put all the links in the show notes, of course.
Thank you very much, Tim, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
See you, mate.